Right on. So thank you all for coming today. This is very bittersweet. So with October being Awareness Month, I thank the pastor for allowing me the opportunity. So thank you. I'm going to give a 25-minute speech. I have it written out. Bear with me. It has powerful stuff in it. Just take it all in. All right? My message today is to bring inspiration and hope and to bring awareness as October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Also to shed some raw truth about behaviors that are abusive and how some injuries can last a lifetime. There is nothing positive about domestic violence. Being unkind to your partner is ugly. Making excuses for bad behaviors is wrong. It's never okay to take peace and joy from another person. It's never okay to promise to take your 18-year-old girlfriend home when you had no intentions of ever taking her home, only to terrorize her and her parents on her whereabouts as punishment. It's never okay to threaten your spouse if they say anything about being abused by you. It is never okay to live in fear of your partner. It's never okay that your life is completely dismantled by abuse. The tactics used to harm, terrorize, and threaten you escalate worse than any horror movie. It's never okay having to memorize a person's behavioral pattern to save your life. It is never okay to stalk another person. It's never okay to go to your partner's job and make threats, causing harm to people or vehicles, then having to be removed by law enforcement. It is never okay to hit someone and continue bashing in someone's face because it's ugly to you. It's never okay to break a person's nose. It is never okay to keep punching a face for 10 years, telling your beautiful wife how ugly and deformed she looks. It is never okay to have to hear your abuser say it was his job to fix your face. It is never okay to rape a young mother who just gave birth to your child less than 30 days prior. It is never okay for a young mother to have to return to work 10 days after having her second child. Breathe. And having her tubes tied. It is never okay for a young mother to have to return to work 10 days after having her second child and just having her tubes tied. It is never okay to drag a person from room to room. It is never okay to get your hair pulled so tight you can't flex. It is never okay for someone to grab you and slam you into the ground, kicking you from your head to toe repeatedly. It is never okay. How did the guy you thought you found at age 18 be the love of your life, when now you are finding yourself struggling to survive in a life with him? How and why did it become so abusive? Could you have seen any of this coming? It is never okay to kick a person to the point they cannot move. A human being is not a soccer ball and should never have to experience another person going through a maniac episode of kicking them as if they were nothing but a soccer ball. That is never okay. The abuser seemingly walks away laughing because they say they don't remember their actions. There is nothing funny about being a liar while the victim walks away after she sustained lifelong injuries with every kick. It is never okay for any person to ever watch, witness, and or experience torture from the hands of another person. Whether they are the victim or if you are that someone standing there watching it happen. There is never an excuse good enough to torture, strangle, and constantly physically beat another human being. And if you are experiencing this, please contact the number shown immediately to help you plan a safe escape. It is never okay to rip off your pregnant wife's clothes in public. It is never okay to harm a pregnant mother physically or sexually. Did you know that married women get raped? Some women get raped every time their abuser touches them. Some women will never experience a gentle, loving relationship with their partner. Only one male will start off pretending to caress her, rubbing her hair, treating her like she is someone beautiful, but she already knows what's coming next because she's already experienced it more than once. She will be humiliated, belittled, manipulated, and intimidated by words and the hands that will become so mean, forceful, slaps and punches her in the face, telling her how she is the worst excuse for a woman. While he's sexually assaulting her, he's telling her how disgusting she is that she can't perform, emphasizing how God made such a mistake when he made her. Then he spits on her when he's done, kicking her while she's a mess and sobbing, telling her to go clean up her pathetic self. Imagine this being your daughter. You, as her parents, already know what you have witnessed done to your daughter and how many times she had to cover up the bruises so her children wouldn't see them. As parents, you are worried sick when you hadn't heard from her in weeks. Yet here you are being terrorized by your daughter's abuser, having to worry every single day that the authorities were going to call you about finding her lifeless body one day because you hadn't heard from her. Domestic violence doesn't just stay in your home. People who are in these situations lie to friends, family, church members, co-workers, even to judges in our court system. These same people you don't want to know about what is happening in your home, they are the ones already talking about you to others because of the screams they heard from your house with that poor woman screaming, "No, please stop." They speak of witnessing a 19-year-old girl, 6 months pregnant, getting her clothes ripped off in public at a pool hall in Martinsville. They were talking about what they saw that man do to her. If this man would do that to her in a public place while she is pregnant, imagine what she was really experiencing in their home to a narcissist who always claimed he would never do anything to hurt or harm the woman he loved. Imagine this woman's mind, who deserved a beautiful life of happiness, joy, and kindness. This woman had a lifetime ahead of her. Yet now this lifetime had been disrupted and tarnished for the rest of her life. So many people watched and were affected by 10 years of stupidity by this one person. In addition to this, they further witnessed a beautiful young woman, so strong and totally embarrassed, to go to work with bruises all over her body, go to court hearings, to the sheriff's office. People close to her came to her home to see how bad those injuries were in person. They also were secretly part of her escape plan for 10 years as they helped her multiple times escape her abuser. Domestic violence affects more than just the victim itself. When any one person remembers witnessing another human being doing one of the lowest acts of violence and seeing it firsthand, how and why should we keep that hidden? It's called a hidden disease because the perpetrator and the family involved practice not speaking about it. They believe if they say nothing, no one else would know. They believe they do no wrong, and you will always hear them blaming something on someone else for their behaviors. The hidden disease hides within our homes, our hearts, and as people, we hush it under the rug. If we keep ignoring that we are as much a part of this vicious cycle, it will never change. If I had a daughter and she was 18 and ready to venture out to the world, I would want her to know about domestic violence and narcissistic behaviors early on. I would never want her to experience what the woman in this story had to endure, knowing narcissistic signs up front versus ignoring signs just because of being a young 18-year-old naive girl, so that she could better understand those behaviors when seen early on. Had this woman knew that a guy who didn't graduate, had no job, no driver's license, no place of his own, and only commented about how cute her butt was, were early signs that this guy was not a good, kind, responsible human, nor did he have any respect for women. Had that 18-year-old girl knew any of this up front, she may not have had to experience being left stranded away from her parents on her graduation night. She would not have given any opportunity for this person to have done the ungodly acts of violence towards her in a 10-year span. She gave him hope that he would change. She kept going back, thinking God was going to intervene and change this man into something good. Reality is, the signs are visible and lots of people are watching and listening. They already know what you are sitting here telling yourself today that you don't want others to know. They already know that you are an abuser. They already know what they saw and heard. They know that woman next door was screaming for her life and that you were the one doing it. People already know. It's not cool for parents having to watch any of their children suffer in silence with abuse. Parents who didn't teach their daughter about domestic violence or abuse because they raised her as a loving and kind parents they were, and they had no idea they would find themselves trying to save their daughter. They would do anything they could to protect their daughter, except now their daughter is being abused, and they worry every second their daughter becomes distant and isn't speaking to them. These parents watched their daughter suffer for 10 years. They watched her run scared. They knew of her having to seek shelter on multiple occasions, placed in hiding. They saw the bruises all over her body for 10 years. They knew of him stalking her, stealing her checkbook, vandalizing, wrecking her car, breaking into her house multiple times, destroying family heirlooms. Her parents knew and watched their daughter survive 10 years of abuse to someone who promised her the world at the age of 18. And then left her stranded on graduation night, and then with no remorse, leaving her for dead 10 years later. Is that what you really want for yourself or your daughter? When you see something, you should always say something. As a society, our stigmatism for today's world is to silence it. Get over it. Don't speak of it. Let it go. Or she should just leave him. All this is doing is sending a message to the narcissist who wants you to believe this way anyway. Say nothing, do nothing, act like you know nothing. And as the abuser, you can just lie and tell authorities and family that you don't remember anything. In a narcissist's mind, this now justifies their bad behaviors. Love marks is what an abuser would call the bruises. Yet the victim you are the one having to go to work being humiliated by the marks left from your abuser. Your voice matters and may be the only voice needed to save another person's life. What are we really teaching our children when we tell them we will always protect them and nothing like that will ever happen to them because you will always protect them? But then your child watches you. The person who said you would protect them watches you harm their mommy. What are you teaching your children into adulthood? You are not only teaching your children that it is okay to be abused, but you are also teaching them that they can be the abuser and it's okay because daddy did it to mommy for 10 years. How do we break the cycle to our own behaviors when it comes to domestic violence? Are you part of the problem? Or do you choose to be a part of the solution? What do your children see and hear out of you every day? No person should live in fear or ever experience threats and harms by their spouse. No person should have to pack up their belongings 10 times a year to seek safety, avoiding another maniac episode that could be the one that ends up taking their life or their children's life. You only come across one unkind person who will say to her words she just had to hear repeatedly. No person should ever have to feel inadequate, dirty, or nasty because of words. Told how much of a disgrace, unworthy, ugly, fat, disgusting, a whore, a liar, poor excuse for a woman, worthless as a mother, no man would ever want you. The way your body is built is a pathetic excuse for a woman. You are just not good enough for anything. Imagine a woman's mind having that literally beat into their head day in and day out for 10 years on top of physical abuse. What if that was your daughter? No person should ever have to explain to their parents that they are being abused. No one should ever have to lie and deny being abused to their OBGYN doctors who were concerned with what they saw with her body, both physically and vaginally. What level of fear are you providing to someone you say you love when you are threatening them severe harm if they don't pull their pants down and be sexually assaulted by you? Please know, your abuser already knows the location he is going to take you. He has already planned out how he will take you down to the ground. How do you prepare yourself or your daughter for such acts that are only known to the person who is creating and planning such violence against her? No person should ever have to feel humiliated when they break the ice and tell someone they are being abused. No one should ever have to either deny abuse or take off their clothes to show the reality of the harm being done by their spouse to their body. No person should have to show how the abuse was escalating while your abuser claimed no responsibility, always using the narcissistic tactic of, I can't remember anything and have no idea how you got those bruises to begin with. Somehow we minimize and find ourselves making excuses for our abusers and their behaviors, accepting blame for their actions. And we fall into their trap, and now we have become as much as their hidden disease. That's what they want us to do. Are we going to break the cycle to domestic violence, or are we going to continue the same behaviors and continue being victimized by it? Domestic violence will no doubt consume you. Nothing will look or feel the same. How you interact with your loved ones will change. It will take away your joy. Your employer will be concerned with your absenteeism. It destroys family. It destroys mind. There is no peace in domestic violence. A narcissist will remember everything and take responsibility for nothing. For the victim, physical bruises may heal. But what about the emotional abuse she had to endure, including having to watch her parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, church members, co-workers, and doctors speaking to her on multiple occasions on how worried they are that her husband is going to kill her if she doesn't escape him. A victim will always remember those who tried to help her even when she was in denial to them. The physical damages sometimes never heal and can be a lifetime of pain and suffering. Is that what you want for your daughter? To not only suffer living in it for 10 years, but to suffer the rest of her life due to the injuries she sustained while living in it? What if that was your mom, your sister, your friend? The emotional damages for any victim must be processed in their minds. No therapist or counselor will ever be able to help a person totally process any traumatic events such as these. These were multiple instances. There must be a level of self-help, work, and time to process and heal from these events. You must allow a victim and a survivor this time, no matter the length of time needed. Imagine from the age of 18, losing control of your mind to a narcissist, finding yourself 38 years later being able to finally free yourself, being able to process every trigger, every emotion that hadn't been processed during that horrible, life-changing 10-year experience. You are free. You are finally free. The woman in the story is resilient, strong, and a survivor. The woman in the story is me.
And you were a survivor.
Marla Jo's story is this. For 10 years in my life, I survived all these things. I lived a life of turmoil bestowed upon me for 10 years. I lived in fear of a human who had the world fooled that he would do anything for me. I was always the breadwinner. During those 10 years, not only did I suffer abuse done to my body that is forever damaging, but my injuries are a constant lifetime of pain and suffering. Even after divorcing my abuser, the intimidating, stalking, and causing serious bodily injuries to my being did not stop. To witness yourself living from what was supposed to be a princess dream with her Prince Charming at a young age of 18, dreaming of raising a beautiful family, going to church, and just being all around happiness, was something I never got to experience. Because at 18, I started living in a domestic violence home because of one bad choice. Becoming a mom and experiencing the enjoyment of a child growing in my belly was stripped from my soul. Trying to be the best mom I could be to my children after birth was just tarnished. I was robbed from all those special moments when my babies were young because I was always having to struggle to survive just to keep the three of us safe from harm versus being able to provide unconditional love in my home. Domestic violence robbed me of being the mom I always wanted to be to my children. That's something I'll never get a chance to ever redo. This is my biggest lifelong pain and suffering struggle. You do not, I repeat, you do not have to live this way. You do not have to stay in a relationship or a marriage when you are only staying because you want your children to be raised with both parents. God had a plan for me, and Lord knows that maybe it's because I'm standing up here today telling my story in a way, Lord help us, I wouldn't want this to be you or your daughter, your mom or your friend or family member. I was someone's daughter. I was someone's sister, friend, and family member, and I became someone's mom. Back in 1995, after being divorced for 4 months, knowing what I had already lived through for 10 years, I watched his anger grow into something so dark and evil. March 18, 1995 changed my life forever. I'll never be the same. For some reason, God allowed me to live through all that torture that day, that very sad day, but in my survival, my physical damages are permanent. I will never be the way I used to be. My facial appearance has been changed forever, and the medical problems that go along with it are forever. This is my second biggest lifelong pain and suffering struggle I will never get a chance to redo. In my survival, I have had to experience, overcome all the unworthiness feelings of being good enough for any man and to share a healthy relationship. I've experienced jealousy due to not being better than another woman. I struggle emotionally with being good enough as a partner, mother, grandmother, even an employee. Insecure about who I am as a woman in general. I needed time to process the triggers of multiple traumatic events, but in a healthy way to understand the why. COVID allowed me that opportunity. When we go back and we look at things later, we can clearly see all the signs we missed in the beginning. If I was to miss a sign like not taking me home from my graduation party and leaving my parents in a panicked state of mind, then I knew I missed something. Teach your daughters, not all boys are safe. Not all boys tell the truth. Some will do unthinkable, horrific things and will always lie about it. Teach good so your children will know what that looks and feels like. And then when they recognize the bad, teach them that they know the bad isn't a place for them. Before COVID, I struggled with accepting I had to live with the damages done to my face, having to face my face every single morning, having to face people with a fake smile, and having to tell Marla Jo every morning in the mirror that she was going to be okay. I hated God, and I didn't mind letting him know it. I looked at the sky and told him multiple times I hated him. I didn't want to be here, didn't know why he left me here. But that same God saved me back in 1995, and then again during COVID. He saved me from myself during COVID. My prayers for isolation that day allowed me a private time to process every single trigger that only God and I knew I was struggling with, and the reasons behind another human doing any of these things to another human. The hope from my story is this. Back in 1995, being left for dead changed me forever. I survived. I am worthy. I have always been worthy. I am beautiful, and I've always been beautiful. I'm a great musician, and I always have been since age 10. I've always been a good mother, even through all the darkness. COVID allowed me to find forgiveness in myself. This is rough. That I blamed myself for 28 years for all of his victims after me. This isn't a secret. Had I pulled the trigger that day, there wouldn't be any more victims. I would have been the last. So when you've carried guilt and shame for 28 plus years to stopping abuse, knowing you could have stopped it that day just by pulling a trigger, and you didn't. Then having to process and understand the meaning behind the emotional triggers of your own horror story, and having to play it all of it back in your head really slow, I now know and understand my fear was real. I wasn't to blame for any of this. I just made one bad choice at an early age of 18 because of not having any knowledge about a narcissist, narcissistic behaviors, and domestic violence. I should have been able to raise my children in a loving, non-abusive home in which they deserved. They needed to learn stability and love and kindness early in life and not have to witness any terrible acts of abuse. I was deprived as a mom of being able to provide that for my children. At age 18, you never dreamed as part of your story 38 years later in 2023 that you personally have had to experience any part of that 10-year experience. Being left for dead changes you forever, especially when it was your ex-spouse who was found not guilty of leaving you in such a state. This person said they loved you and would always do good things for you. Having serious bodily injury done to you permanently, life will never look the same. How someone could promise the world and steal everything good, destroying every ounce of happiness and peace that could have been experienced as the mother I truly wanted to be for my babies, and then replace it with a lifetime of hidden hurt. That mess can never be cleaned up. No matter how good my children and I build us back together again, our lives were tarnished from the start. So don't say it won't happen to you and that you will kill someone if they did this to your daughter or your child. I was someone's daughter, and my parents did everything they could to protect me from someone who wasn't kind. God kept me alive that one day when my injuries were supposed to have taken my life. What was done to me wasn't fair. I can't go back and change any of it. For 38 years now in 2023, I am choosing to speak out, realizing I had no knowledge about domestic violence at age 18. I have had to embrace my health and that my face is forever changed by the hands of another, and I will always have complications till I die. God doesn't make junk. God had a plan for me to save me from death to the hands of my abuser and gave me a second chance. He gave me hope when I lost all sense of any hope. And God was so powerful that day, somehow, He gave multiple people in my story a second chance, too, including my abuser. God gave them a chance to change their behaviors. I hope they all embrace this moment as more than just awareness of me, someone speaking out about their story, but to make a difference, being part of the solution, not the problem. I will close here by saying two things. First, I have forgiven my abuser. That allowed me to free my mind to find healing for myself. When God gave me and so many people a second chance, we all were given the same opportunity to be better humans to one another, to show kindness versus any darkness. If we find forgiveness to those who have wronged us, and especially be given a second chance to live versus a death sentence that can't be reversed, our hearts would be free of any bitterness, allowing us to show love to others. Secondly, if you're in a dating mode, this is for the guys, please know this, that the girl or woman you are getting ready to date, she may seem standoffish to you or to certain touches by you. Please understand that she went through several so-called kind touches that turned very dark for her. Allow her the space to trust your hands and the words from your mouth so she doesn't have to flinch with uncertainty to your motives. Love shouldn't hurt. I was deserving of love. It's never okay to be beaten. I was someone's daughter. It's never okay that I was an abused woman. I am Marla Joe, and I am a survivor of domestic violence. I'm going to share, and then I'm going to get down and let the pastor take over. This is on the wall here. I have copies of other stuff down in here and bags. The bags are for you to take if you know someone. It's like a little survival kit. It's got a number in there. It's got some stories, some Amazon links for the books that you see up here. These are books that helped me during COVID, that helped me get through the healing process. And there's a whistle in there. So like if you're in a situation where maybe that's all you have, the only weapon you have is a whistle. So maybe you blow that whistle and somebody hears it. Maybe that person that hears it is the only person that was able to save your life that day. So anyway, please feel free to take those and any of the things that are down there. I wanted to explain this right here. In 1992, I had been married 6 years. My mom gave me this. This was in the Martinsville Reporter, and she cut it out and gave it to me in secret. And she said, if you don't heed to the warning of what this paper says, he's going to kill you. Let that sink in. So my parents knew this. She gave me this. I folded it up and I put it in my billfold. Still have it to this day, but I was able to secretly get it to my job, and I put it in my desk drawer, and I looked at it every day I was at work. It's heart-wrenching to think that I was almost that, and my mom had given me that 3 years prior. So it's just something that's always going to be dear to my heart, and I will always keep that because that was a tool that my mom gave me because she saw it coming, right? And so this next slide, this is my transformation. So you find yourself in a 18, you don't even know your abuser. You've never met him. Everything, you got the world in front of you. 10 years later, you're finding yourself almost, being left for dead. And it took you 28 years later, from 95 till now, to be this. I have made a huge transformation, and I'm so proud of me. So, just real quick, too. Melissa's story, got some of the stuff over here in her books as well. She's out in New York. I met these ladies during, when I broke my silence on social media. When I done that, started getting into groups, that's how I met these people. They're very dear to my heart. Miss Karen had a daughter, pregnant. She was murdered and the baby too. Back in, I think the date was 2016. Her abuser is in Texas, living life without parole. But this is a mother that is out and about. She's stopping human trafficking, domestic violence, the whole 9 yards. Her stuff is up here. Her organization is up here as well, and their information is here. So and then the last one, Naysay Vaughn's story is about pushing the ugly out. So, I needed to push the ugly out, right? So that book kind of helped me do some of that. And then the gentleman on the bottom, that was a friend of mine. He was murdered in 2016 by domestic violence, by his ex. So she murdered him. So those are some stories that I shared deep to my heart. And I thank you all for listening and for allowing me this opportunity.